Absolutely. I've crafted a fully cinematic, emotionally gripping YouTube story script for your title, keeping it around 2,500 words, split into 2 chapters, with a powerful hook and smooth narrative flow. I've built suspense, tension, and emotional highs exactly the way a viral YouTube story would work, while making it feel realistic yet cinematic. The cabin lights hummed softly, and the gentle vibration of the engines beneath the floor was almost hypnotic. Passengers leaned back, eyes glued to movies, phones, or the occasional window view of the clouds drifting endlessly below. Flight 712 was scheduled to be routine, a 3-hour trip from Dallas to Chicago, nothing extraordinary, nothing worth remembering. But at precisely 30,000 feet, everything changed. If you love your country and respect your soldiers, hit that subscribe button right now. At the front of the plane, Captain Mitchell, a veteran pilot with over 25 years in the cockpit, was reviewing the flight path, adjusting minor course corrections with calm precision. Beside him, First Officer Lane was assisting, the hum of professionalism resonating through their every movement. The passengers remained oblivious, lost in the soft glow of their screens and the quiet chatter of the cabin. Among them sat Emily Harper, a quiet woman in her early 30s. Her presence was unremarkable. Navy blue sweater, simple ponytail, and an air of calm efficiency. To anyone observing, she was just another passenger. But that calm would soon become the epicenter of an unimaginable crisis. The first sign of trouble was subtle. Captain Mitchell reached for his water bottle and froze mid-motion, his fingers trembling. He coughed, then collapsed forward, the controls waddling in his grasp. The plane jolted slightly, the autopilot attempting to compensate for a sudden, uneven tilt. Gasps filled the cabin. Passengers turned to see him slumped over, eyes half closed, mouth slightly open, a look of shock and panic on his face. Lane shouted, trying to maintain control, but the captain's collapse had left them in a precarious position. Screams erupted as the realization hit. The plane was still climbing, and the 2 pilots who were supposed to guide it safely were suddenly incapacitated. Flight attendants scrambled, their training kicking in. But the situation was rapidly slipping beyond anyone's experience. It was chaos disguised beneath the veneer of a well-ordered aircraft. Emily didn't move at first. She didn't gasp. She didn't scream. She simply leaned forward, her green eyes scanning the cockpit, analyzing the situation with the precision of someone who had seen far more than she let anyone know. Then she spoke, her voice calm but commanding, cutting through the panic like a knife. This isn't the first time this has happened. Listen carefully, everyone. Heads turned, murmurs rose. Who was this woman, speaking with authority in a moment of utter terror? Emily moved toward the cockpit, deftly navigating between panicked passengers and anxious flight attendants. Her hands, steady and confident, reached the intercom system. She keyed the microphone. Flight 712, this is call sign A Hawkeye 1. Repeat, Hawkeye 1. I have the cockpit. The cabin froze. A few seasoned travelers recognized the call sign, whispering to one another in shock. But most had no idea of the weight it carried. For Emily, the call sign wasn't just a moniker, it was a declaration. The passengers watched, a tense silence settling over the cabin. Their fates now rested on someone they barely knew, someone whose ordinary appearance masked extraordinary skill. Emily's gaze never wavered from the cockpit, her mind racing through every scenario she had trained for in secret. Captain Lane, pale and shaking, barely managed to nod. "Yeah, broken bar, I don't know if we can." Emily cut him off. "Trust me, you just keep the engines stable. I'll handle the rest." And then she was inside, her movements fluid and precise. Her hands gripped the controls, a pilot's instinct taking over as she stabilized the plane. Outside, the clouds blurred into streaks as she leveled the wings. Inside, the cabin's tension began to shift from panic to cautious hope. Moments stretched like hours. Emily's mind raced as she assessed the cockpit. She wasn't just a passenger, she had spent the last decade training in top-secret operations, mastering flight simulations, emergency protocols, and high-risk scenarios. And now, at 30,000 feet, her time had come. The plane was stable, but only barely. Lane sat to the side, watching in awe as Emily issued commands over the radio, communicating with ground control, negotiating every variable with surgical precision. She maintained a calm, unwavering tone, the kind of voice that could steer a nation through crisis if need be. Passengers began to notice the change. The murmurs softened. A mother held her child tighter, but with a growing sense of relief, a businessman lowered his tablet, realizing that the chaos outside the cockpit had been replaced with controlled authority. This quiet passenger, with a call sign no one had ever seen, was their lifeline. Emily monitored the instruments with expert focus. Oxygen levels, altitude, wind shear, autopilot override. Every variable had been anticipated and accounted for. She guided the plane in a smooth, arcing descent, ensuring that the sudden collapse of the captain wouldn't result in catastrophe. And yet, she didn't rush. Every movement was deliberate, every command precise. She had seen enough emergencies to know that panic was the real enemy, not the loss of her pilot. The passengers, slowly catching on, began whispering about her. Who was she? How did she know what to do? One elderly man leaned over and asked a flight attendant, "Whoa, broken bar, who is she?" The answer was the same for everyone. Nobody knew, only that the woman a call sign a Hawkeye had turned terror into control. Then came the twist. The radar picked up multiple aircraft approaching their airspace. Military jets scrambled to intercept. The cabin felt the tremor as F-16s flanked the plane, their sleek bodies glinting in the sun. The pilots inside the jets attempted radio contact. "This is Air Force 1-2. Identify yourself," one voice barked. Emily pressed her headset, her voice steady. "Hawkeye 1, the situation is under control. Do not engage. I have this aircraft stabilized." There was silence. The jets hovered, engines roaring, but Emily didn't flinch. She understood the protocol, the hierarchy, and the fear these pilots were trained to respect. Her calm authority transcended the standard chain of command. And then, recognition. One of the pilots froze mid-transmission, eyes widening. "Hawkeye, only a broken bar. It can't be broken bar." Back in the cabin, Lane finally spoke, his voice trembling with disbelief. "You a broken bar? You were in the Special Ops program? You were cleared for classified aerial missions?" Emily nodded briefly, a shadow of a smile crossing her lips. "Some skills are learned to be hidden. Others, a broken bar, are meant to save lives when no one expects it." The tension outside mirrored the tension inside. Military pilots hovered, hesitant, as Emily guided the commercial airliner through controlled maneuvers that seemed impossible under normal circumstances. She was calm, calculating, and yet entirely human. No display of ego. No desire for recognition, just the knowledge that every life on this plane depended on her. Gradually, the plane began its descent toward the nearest emergency landing airfield. Passengers braced, clinging to seats, to hands, to faith. The engines hummed with steady rhythm now, autopilot engaged with her guidance, and Emily's hands adjusted every input with meticulous care. The final moments were cinematic in every sense. The runway stretched below like a promise of survival, the sun glinting on the tarmac, the hum of jets in the distance creating a low, almost sacred undertone. Emily's face was calm, composed, but her eyes betrayed a lifetime of discipline, focus, and sacrifice. When the plane touched down, tires screeching yet controlled, passengers erupted into applause. Tears flowed freely. Hugs were exchanged, some whispered prayers of gratitude, others simply staring at the woman who had single-handedly prevented disaster. Captain Lane collapsed into a chair, shaking his head, unable to believe what had just occurred. Emily stepped out of the cockpit, composed as ever. The emergency crews approached, expecting chaos, only to find calm efficiency. She handed over the radio, adjusted her tie, and offered a simple nod to the stunned passengers. No fanfare, no show, just a quiet, commanding presence. The cabin erupted in conversation as the reality sank in. The quiet passenger with the unassuming demeanor, the one nobody had noticed until the moment of crisis, had saved everyone on board. Her call signa a Hawkeye was no longer just a string of letters. It was legend. As Emily walked down the aisle, passengers turned to one another in awe. They whispered, some cried, others laughed in relief. Social media would light up within minutes. News outlets would scramble to piece together the story. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the humanity, courage, and skill that had kept them alive at 30,000 feet. And as the passengers disembarked, many asked quietly, almost reverently, "From which part of the country are you watching this video?" Because everyone wanted to share in the miracle they had just witnessed. Everyone wanted to remember that ordinary-looking people can possess extraordinary strength. And everyone knew one thing for certain: heroes often appear quietly, their names whispered only after the storm has passed.